I'm Elaine Reyes at the Pan American Health Organization in Washington, D.C., and this is UN Insider.
Coming up.
Violence starts often very subtly, and it tends to escalate over time.
Working to find solutions to a problem that impacts women around the world.
We have to remember that preventing violence is never the responsibility of the survivor.
A conversation on eliminating violence against women. Next.
Gender equality and women's empowerment is goal number 5 of the Sustainable Development Goals. On this episode of UN Insider, we focus on one of the most concerning obstacles to gender equality: violence against women and girls. Around the world, an estimated 840 million women have experienced violence in 2024. 137 women and girls were killed every day by partners or family members. I discuss the problem and potential solutions with Britta Baer, Regional Advisor on Violence Prevention at the Pan American Health Organization. Britta, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
New estimates from the World Health Organization and the Pan American Health Organization show that violence against women and girls continues to be a persistent crisis in the Americas. 1 in every 3 women experience physical or sexual violence. Can you tell us more about the findings?
1 in 3 women aged 50 and above have experienced physical or sexual violence. This indicator translates to about 123 million women affected in this region. So, I mean, that number by itself, 123 million, is huge. The data we use to inform this indicator really is based on 2 sub-indicators. One is on intimate partner violence, which is the most common form of violence against women. 1 in 4 women in the region has experienced intimate partner violence. And we also use a second indicator on sexual violence from somebody who's not a partner. So 1 in 8 women have experienced sexual violence by someone other than a partner. So together, we're really talking about a huge challenge that is facing the region and that continues to be a priority for everybody.
When it comes to intimate partner violence, can you talk about mental health at home, both as a trigger of violence and as a consequence of violence?
I think one thing to keep in mind when we talk about intimate partner violence and mental health is that there is really no single cause of violence. Really, we need to look at multiple factors. Mental health or stress, high stress moments can be a trigger of violence, but they're not the only cause. So we always need to, when we want to prevent, look at all of the risk factors that might involve things like age, socioeconomic status, education, the situation of a relationship, gender equality in the society. So mental health is in that broader context. Mental health or high stress moments can be a trigger of violence. But we need to end their clear consequence of violence. So we know, for example, that women that have experienced intimate violence have the double risk of experiencing depression, double the risk of experiencing anxiety or post-traumatic stress, more than 4 times more likely to intend suicide. So when we talk about some of the mental health challenges in this region, which always touch topics like depression, anxiety, and suicide, we have to also talk about violence, because if not, we cannot prevent some of the mental ill health that comes from this.
Any challenges or priorities for health ministers in Latin America when it comes to violence against women and girls in country, and then perhaps collaboratively?
One of the things that I love about this region is that this is not a new topic. It is a persistent challenge, but that also means that we've been doing a lot of work in this, like the region as a whole. This is the region of Belén do Pará, the first ever Inter-American Convention on Violence Against Women. It's where ministers of health first came together in 2015 to adopt a regional strategy on the health system and what they can do at the regional level to address violence against women. So there are lots of positive things that we can build on. And I think because there's so much activity, there's a lot of value in having this regional dialogue. because there's a lot we know and a lot of activities going on, and there's a lot in common that countries of the Americas have that they can learn from each other and help us really like raise the visibility of this issue to make it like a topic that we talk about, that we find solutions for. Beyond that, health ministries are key about strengthening policies, clinical guidelines, health services for survivors of violence. We know that women tend to be in contact with health services. A lot of times, if you think about our lives, how many times are we in touch with health workers? Maybe for vaccines, maybe for maternal health care, maybe for reproductive health care, maybe to bring a child to the doctor. All of these contacts are opportunities that we have in the health system because they don't exist in other sectors. They exist only in health services. And that means that we can identify in health services at-risk groups early and provide them with support, thereby preventing violence. Because violence doesn't just happen like this. Violence starts often very subtly, and it tends to escalate over time. Partner violence tends to become worse. But we don't have to wait till femicide. There's no reason to wait until the death of a woman. We can intervene much earlier, but that is why health services are so critical, to identify the groups early, provide them with first-line support, and connect them to other types of support.
What about populations that perhaps are in more rural or underserved areas? Can you tell us what's being done when it comes to indigenous populations or other minorities, Afro-Latinas?
Violence is a challenge in all contexts. There's really, any woman can experience violence. And we need to be careful not to make assumptions that a woman can't or will be protected. There are no protected times, there are no protected spaces, there are no protected ages or groups, really. So that in general. Of course, we know that risk factors are different for different groups in society. And more importantly, not only can the risks differentiate between different groups, the access to support can. So maybe in some contexts, someone that might live really far from health services will have a harder time to access support. On sexual violence, every minute counts, for example. So when you're further away, or maybe you don't have the transport, or maybe you don't know where the health service is, it will delay you at least. And this is why we should be especially concerned, starting with groups that have a harder time to access services, to access support that might be at higher risk, because that's really where we need to start.
Coming up.
We stand with survivors. We believe survivors. We support survivors. And survivors are not alone.
UN Insider.
Making sense of the overwhelming wave of information means cutting through the noise to shine a light on the heart of the story and making room for new perspectives. True understanding means the ability to see events from more than one side. I'm Liu Xin, and this is The Point.
"360-degree profiles of industry movers and shakers, tech mavericks, and policymakers. We drill down on their success. We ask how they set strategy and how they navigate in an increasingly competitive market. Real talk, real business. Join the conversation. Biz Talk, only on CGTN.
Economics, conflicts, and climate change impacts are just some of the factors that are intensifying gender-based violence around the world. But there are strategies to address gender violence. Let's continue my conversation with Britta Baer, Regional Advisor on Violence Prevention at the Pan American Health Organization. PAHO in 2024 came up and put together this toolkit to improve data collection when it comes to documenting violence against women. What more can you tell us about that?
We need data for everything that we do to make sure that all of our interventions are based on the best possible knowledge so that they can be the most effective, the most targeted intervention we can think of. So in that context, it's really important that we also make use of data in health services. So for example, data about who's using our service, when are they using it, for what type of violence, who was the aggressor, what kind of treatment they got, did they come back? This kind of information is critical when we think about interventions, because if we don't have that information, it's really hard to come up with solutions. So that is the aim of that kit that you mentioned, to help health services do a better job documenting cases of violence that reach us. Because we need that information to make sure that our response, our services are targeting the right people, the right context, and offer the best solutions.
I mean, it circles back to the prevention part of it, which you were talking about earlier. Can you tell us about clinical protocols, survivors' treatments, awareness campaigns, more of the mental health assistance when it comes to prevention, and using a lot of that information that you just mentioned?
We don't have to wait until violence escalates. Sometimes when we look at emergency rooms or cases of violence in the news, they're often extremely severe cases of violence. And of course, we need to work together to respond and support that woman. At the same time, though, sort of like from a prevention perspective, we don't have to wait. We can intervene much earlier. Violence is a cycle. The earlier we intervene, the greater the chance of preventing the consequences in terms of mental health, physical health, sexual, reproductive health, in terms of their well-being, the impact on their family, the economic costs associated with violence, right? If we do this earlier in something, for example, in partner violence, controlling behaviors, or first cases of emotional violence, we can prevent a lot of the severe consequences of violence that we know about. That to me is one of the best things that health service can do to prevent violence. Of course, at a broader level, part of that needs to be also that we act as models of zero tolerance in our interactions. So that sort of touches a little bit what you mentioned about community engagement or awareness campaigns, right? Health services are in contact with communities all of the time. If you think about somebody that you trust, it could be a nurse, a doctor, a health service specialist. So these people have a role to say, you know, we stand with survivors, we believe survivors, we support survivors, and survivors are not alone.
So with more awareness, are you finding that there are outside people making reports, teachers, healthcare workers, children, so the onus isn't just on the victim trying to find help in instances of abuse?
I think we have to remember that preventing violence is never the responsibility of the survivor. And in fact, one of the biggest challenges we have is that we put the onus, like you said, on the survivor. And then in addition to that, we sometimes as a society tend to question the survivor and their choices. You know, like things like, why was she walking in the street? Why didn't she ask for help? Why did she call out louder? Why was she wearing this? Like, I mean, these are all examples of victim blaming. And we have to stop this. This has nothing to do, like this makes the situation worse. We as society have the role to prevent violence, right? So we should like, you know, call out each other for not engaging earlier. And I think that's really, every single one of us has a role to help and support, believe survivors, you know, and support them in their choices. We can't assume that we know what the situation is like. We don't. So the best thing we can do is support that person, believe them, and, you know, not blame them, not shame them for not calling for help earlier. No, we are not in their shoes, right? We need to support them and believe them and help them in this journey. But the decision how help should work is with the survivor. That is something we tell health workers all of the time, and there are in fact lots of good examples in the region of applying something that PAHO calls lives anima in Spanish, which is all about how can we center our responses around the survivor and make sure we're supporting them in their choices. We're not blind to the issue, but we also can't take decision for them. We have to just be there to support and accompany them in this process.
How big of a challenge has been the rise of violence online and digital violence that may start out as perhaps online or verbal abuse or written abuse that could also lead to something more physical?
We're just about to enter the 16 days, which this year focus on technology facilitated violence. So anything that is, any violent act that is either facilitated, aggravated, takes place with digital tools. And this is an area that is rapidly growing. You don't have a lot of data on it, but we know it's a major challenge. It's particularly of concern both for adult women as well as younger, adolescent girls. There's a global study that suggests one in two experience at least one act of online harassment. That's like shocking numbers. Digital violence is important because we know the impact it has on women. It is one form of violence and yet another example of there not being a protected space for women. So as we spend more time online, violence kind of follows us. But it's also important because violence is a learned behavior. So it doesn't just happen in isolation, but the thing with violence is that it can start online and continue in person, or it can start in person and then expand online. So there are really no borders. And that is a scary thought and something that we need to address.
Britta Baer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
UN Insider.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
What does gender equality look like? A small community in Brazil offers some insight. It's a town where women take the lead in many aspects of life.
Minha vida é linda.
Noiva do Cordeiro may seem like any other small, remote Brazilian community. But much of its leadership, its decision-making, and its identity are centered around women. It's even been called a village of women. It's a way of life that's in sharp contrast with the rest of the country. The community functions as a collective, from food, education, entertainment, to money. Rather than earning individual salaries, any income is pooled to meet everyone's needs. Whatever remains is shared
Aqui neste lugar não existe solidão.
Márcia and Maciel are musicians who call Noiva do Cordeiro home.
Quando alguém precisa, junta todo mundo com os trocadinhos, se for fazer exame.
When someone needs something, everyone chips in, whether it's for a medical exam or even something joyful like a trip. If someone dreams of going to the beach but doesn't have the money, we get together, form a group, and make it happen.
Turminha para ele ir junto.
The community's matriarch is a quiet, humble woman named Delina.
Se as pessoas
If people knew how important it is, how much of a paradise it is to live in unity, the world would be a much better place.
era mundo bem melhor.
Ela sabe me mostrar o meu caminho, a direção.
Every morning, members of the community, mostly women, climb onto a truck that rumbles toward the fields. It's not just a ride, it's a moment of togetherness before work begins. Today, the task is to weed and harvest the corn. Leia oversees the farm and keeps everything running smoothly.
Depende da necessidade do serviço.
Depending on the amount of work, that's how many people come. If there's a lot to do, many people show up, like you're seeing today. Fewer people come, and others do different tasks if it's quieter.
Atividades lá também.
The community grows everything from corn and beans to coffee and bananas. Agriculture is the main source of income, but it's also a way to achieve abundance and self-sufficiency.
O que sobra a gente comercializa.
What we have left, we sell. We make deliveries and take them to a weekly market in Belo Horizonte. We take and sell everything we grow there, too.
A gente leva e vende lá na feira também.
Leia says she loves farming, a discovery she didn't make until later in life. Until 23, she lived about 80 kilometers away in a favela in the state capital, Belo Horizonte. Facing hunger, hardship, and without access to education, her family was brought to Noiva do Cordeiro by her mother's cousin, Delina.
O amor, consideração, humanidade.
Love, compassion, humanity, I didn't have any of that. Through her, I realized love is worth it and that respect is worth it. If every day of my life I want to be a better person, it's because of her.
Eu quero ser uma pessoa melhor, é por ela.
Claudia teaches sociology at the community school. Today, the classroom is an open field. This outdoor learning space is called Projeto Vida, or Life Project.
Projeto que a gente
It's a project where we work from the seed's germination to the plant's harvest.
planta.
Life Project is a collaboration between all the school's teachers.
O professor de geografia vai trabalhar.
The geography teacher works on latitude, longitude, terrain, and topography. The biology teacher covers the entire development of the plant. The math teacher teaches them how to measure the land and calculate how many seedlings fit in each bed, so they get the theory in the classroom with all the teachers and the hands-on practice outdoors.
E a prática aqui, a céu aberto.
Claudia says her role is to help students see the value in working the land, to understand and appreciate their roots.
Eu tive professores.
I have had teachers since I was little who taught me, and now I get to pass it on. And I do it with all the love in the world, teaching them to teach the younger ones, so this never ends. Because it's a treasure I received for free. I was born here. I didn't have to fight to get it. But I fight with everything I have to protect it so it never goes away. I want my great-great-grandchild and every generation after to live what I live today, because I can tell you from the heart, I'm the happiest person in the world.
Eu sou a pessoa mais feliz desse mundo. E eu falo com todo o meu coração.
The community's other sources of income include handcrafted goods, homemade condiments like malagueta peppers, and even cachaça, a traditional Brazilian spirit made from sugarcane. In the sewing workshop, they take on work that companies outsource to them. The community now has over 300 people, about half men, half women. Most of the men work around the village, doing whatever the community needs, building, making repairs, or taking care of the land. A few, like Leandro, work in Belo Horizonte, but on weekends, they always come home.
Calor humano, né? Human warmth, you know? That's how I was raised here, with unity. Out there, it's different. Everyone's on their own. It's a tough fight. And you get left behind if you don't stand your ground. But here, everyone helps each other. There's absolute unity. É mais união mesmo.
The community's men and women are said to be equal.
Living here, there's no difference between men and women. We're in it together. We become a true family. In our daily lives, nothing sets us apart.
But it's a place that is known for its women, their leadership, their skill, their power. Márcia Maciel makes sertanejo music, Brazil's version of country music, songs about love and everyday life in the countryside. This song is dedicated to Delina.
Este pedaço do céu foi Delina que nos deu, ele tem sabor de mel.
Out of a history of exclusion, of being judged, misunderstood, and often isolated from the world, the women of Noiva do Cordeiro have built a community where women lead, have opportunities, and live together in harmony. It's a story Delina is proud of.
Maybe it helped someone open their heart and live more humanely.
Humanamente. Seja eterna, Delina, nossa flor.
I'm Elaine Reyes at the Pan American Health Organization in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being a UN Insider.